Hello physical fiends, it's Jordan here, back again with another big chunky video list. This time all the physical otomes on the Nintendo Switch. Now I am not an expert, this is not my, area of interest shall we say, but I do know one person who is big on otome, and that is my good friend Katie Pajamas. This entire video was written by her. These are all her thoughts and her expertise on the otome genre on the Nintendo Switch. The words are coming from my mouth, but they are her opinions, okay? This is every physical Nintendo Switch game that is an otome visual novel. Let's see what Katie has to say. The Switch is this console generation's otome giant. It cannot be denied with not only digital releases that flood the store, but more relevant to this video is the abundance of physical releases that we are blessed with. In total, there are currently a whopping 53 physical otome releases that visual novel lovers will enjoy for all their romance and wackiness that you can expect from the genre. This is all the physical otome releases for Nintendo Switch. Kicking off our great long list is Hakuoki Chronicles of Wind and Blossom. I personally was awaiting this one to make its way over to the Switch eventually, and finally the time is now. Published physically on Switch by our friends at East Asia Soft, this remastered compilation is of both Hakuoki Edo Blossoms and Hakuoki Kyoto Winds. It focuses on the protagonist Chizuru and her many romantic interests who are amongst the warriors of the Shinsengumi. While you can expect a lot of romance and passion between our characters, you can also expect history, politics, and intrigue in the Hakuoki games. This beautiful series was long awaited on the Switch and is a welcome addition to the otome ranks that are already available on the Switch, and this is an updated version with revised text, making it the best way to experience this classic otome. Physically, this was only available in English at PlayAsia. Jack Jeanne is probably one of my favorite recent examples of an amazing and gorgeously designed otome that is near the top of my personal list. Set in the respected boys-only drama school of Univale, our protagonist Kisa Tachnibana is determined to uncover the mystery of her brother's disappearance, while also not letting anyone discover the secret that she is a girl. She finds this more difficult as time goes on, as she starts to fall in love with one of the several different romance options that she happens to be going to school with. But do they know her secret? This otome comes paired with not only beautiful visuals and a stunning soundtrack, but actually surprisingly competent rhythm gameplay sections that require your full focus, because if you don't do well, the ending you receive may not be to your liking. Set in a country where everyone is born with a death curse that causes everyone to die at the age of 23, Virche Evermore starts off with a depressing premise. Ceres is the name of our heroine this time, but she is given by everyone in her country the delightfully cheery nickname Death, because she has the ability to kill people. Naturally, not everyone is a fan of her for this, and thus our story really begins. Virche Evermore is definitely one of the darker otomes out there. Its visuals play into this well, as does the overall setting and story, and that is enhanced by the fact that while this game is very good, it is one of the very, very subjective otomes that won't lean into the full-on romance, but instead gives you a lot of despair, so therefore isn't recommended for everyone. Monokuma would love it though, with as much despair as you'll come across here. Epic Lycoris, the follow-up, which is soon to be releasing in the West in November, will continue on with these stories and give you a little more of that love and depression in the form of a whole new game. Overall, Virche Evermore lives for the gritty romance and very much succeeds at what it aims to deliver. Butterfly's Poison Blood Chains has had a rocky localization history, but here it is at last on the Switch. In the war-torn and uncertain year of 1918 in Tokyo, our protagonist, Yuiko Nomiya, is a noble woman with an incredibly fiery personality. Lo and behold, she is pursued by 5 handsome, debonair men, all with their own fun and mysterious personalities, while she's in the midst of some family misfortunes she's trying to overcome. Overall, the game comes with a good story and some very steamy moments, and to see it brought and localized with an English patch on the Switch is a very pleasant surprise. If you want to add something fun, spicy, and unique to your library, this one definitely fills that gap. And by the way, this one is specifically only in Japan, at least physically, but it does have English. And in fact, a good few of these otomes are exclusive to Japan, but do have English. And if you want to purchase any of them, check the links down below in the description and pinned comment. I've put links to Play Asia, and you can import them for yourself so you can keep a physical copy forever, and you can support me at the same time. Plus, I can support you too with the code Jordan24. That is for Play Asia and only for the import exclusives, because as we've already said, not all of them are import exclusives. Many of them did in fact get a Western physical, which I'll talk about how you can support me in that way pretty soon. How high do the stakes have to be to make an otome declared thrilling? Best example to follow this genre is the Collar X Malice series, which consists of Collar X Malice and Collar X Malice Unlimited, two incredibly stylish otomes that follow a young police officer and her quest to discover a terrorist organization's plots, with a collar that will be activated if you don't follow the directions of said organization. It will cause your untimely death. But with assistance from a team of ragtag detectives, police officers, and other mystery characters, Collar X Malice is one of the ultimate mystery adventure otomes out there. I found myself intrigued on multiple levels with the mystery, and every route has its own insane twists and turns, enough to keep anyone on the edge of their seat. So, if you're in the mood for terror that you'll feel as you face Adonis, the terrorist organization, coupled with the collar around your neck and the normal pitfalls of any otome relationship and all that comes with it, pick up Collar X Malice and see what all the fuss is about. It is worth every second. Welcome to a world of enchanting fairy tales and role reversals where everything is backwards and you're trying to stumble through it. That pretty much describes Taishou Cross Alice and all that you can expect from both All-in-One and the other release, Heads and Tails. In All-in-One, it lets you fill the shoes of Yurika Arisu, and not only incredibly spirited heroine, but also someone who has her own mysteries about her that you're left to figure out entirely on your own. With a bunch of gender-swapped love interests from Cinderella all the way to Alice, this is one of those otomes that you really have to play to understand what you're getting yourself into. The game is split into 3 episodes and an epilogue, all of which are included in the All-in-One release. However, the physical edition, which is exclusive to Japan, it should be noted that it does not have English on the cartridge, but is rather available only as a patch. Heads and Tails, however, follows the similar Fandiscs formula of containing additional dating options and after stories for romance from the first game, as well as some other goodies. But that Japanese physical release does have English on the cartridge and is only available in Japan. Overall, Taishou X Alice is a fun spin on fairy tales, and heck, who doesn't love a little dark romance and some role reversal? Give these two a look. Genso Menage is an upcoming, very much anticipated otome visual novel following Emma, who was previously a witch but is now powerless and suffering from a touch of amnesia after an accident that took place when she was a child. The game takes place in France and features a traveling amusement park. Along with light colors and an overall dreamy pastel-looking tone that screams fluffy and magical, I am all about this life. Featuring 6 different male leads, the more Emma digs into their past, she finds out all the employees seem to be trapped for some reason to the amusement park. The real question is, can she help them out and how? Genso Menage is scheduled to release in the West, hopefully sometime soon, but it's been out in Japan for quite some time. Really hoping we see this drop sooner rather than later, and can't wait to find out more about the romance and all the magic buried inside this crazy carnival. Tengoku Struggle's Strayside seemed to have dropped without much fanfare back when it released in the West in April 24, but that doesn't mean it's one that you should disregard. Despite its dark sounding story of the human and hell realm interacting, it's actually considered to be a rather comedic game for what it is, and features 5 love interests to choose from. And you as Rin Enma, while she may come across as a bit strict occasionally, I really love her as a protagonist because she gets stuff done. And as the adopted daughter of the King of Hell, she kinda has to be that way. Especially as she's in charge of tracking down the escapee prisoners from the Hell realm that are now deep in the human realm. While the humor of the story does balance a lot of the game, there's still a darkness to it based on the subject matter. That being said, I can't recommend this one enough, if for the sheer fact that it's just a heck of a lot of fun. With all the great otomes out there, there have to be some that are, subjectively not as good as all the others. Paradigm Paradox? Well, here we are. A future set otome with a fun, unique twist follows Yuki, an average high school kid that no one understands, who spends her time being rather boring, but finds herself in wacky situations, one of which is a run-in with a monster known as a Vector. This run-in causes her to be introduced to a set of 4 female superheroes who, after rescuing her, open her eyes to a whole new world. As it turns out, these 4 female superheroes are 4 male classmates of hers that transform into females for their superhero persona. And not only that, but now she has powers as well. And not only that, but there's even a villain route to explore in addition to the hero ones. The story itself, while not bad, isn't as thrilling as the potential it had to be. If I could describe this game in particular, I would say it defines wasted potential. Overall, an average otome that I wouldn't recommend be at the top of anyone's reading list. Bakumatsu Renka Shinsengumi is one that I haven't personally played despite it having originally released back in the early 2000s, but also I hadn't heard much about it up until its recent English release. This otome features Suzuka Sakuraba, a girl who joins the Shinsengumi and lives through history in the making as a result. There's many a love interest to choose from and many a different story to see in this release. And as the first female member of the Shinsengumi, how could there not be some pitfalls and romances to run into? I'm looking forward to one day checking this out since it sounds historical and interesting based on the premise alone. Now, the physical release for this was only released in Japan, but it does have English. Another otome released from P-Cube, Celestia Chain of Fate delivers a romance/fantasy/comedy adventure with a small number of love interests to focus on. With only 3 choices in this release, this one features some gorgeous romance scenes that you'll come across while playing. Our main girl here is Aria, a half angel, half demon, as she attends Celestia Academy, a magical school that will be filled, for her, with magic, romance, and mystery. Speaking of which, Celestia, as opposed to normal otome formats, here we have a linear story with romantic interactions sprinkled throughout that's determined who's in them by the interactions and choices that you make. And speaking of choices, since this is a fantasy game, you'll have an angel, a demon, a half-angel prince all fighting for your attention, so you got your work cut out for you while you're going through the main story where your previously wonderful life is shaken up as Aria learns about magic and her wild family history. While this does sound like a setup for one of the bad $5 romance books, the game itself falls into the okay category, with showcasing a lot of work going into the game, but not a whole lot of payoff in the end. Another exciting upcoming release on the Switch, and another previous Japanese-only Vita release, there is a fantasy title called Battlefield Waltz from Idea Factory. Lan is the maiden of the cursed sword, and having grown up amongst combat, she is at home on the battlefield, especially after discovering the said sword and its immense amount of power. The game itself, from release screenshots, looks visually stunning and has many a romance from its 6 different options, and that's despite the hardcore grungy battlefield setting. From what I've read and heard, this is one to keep your eye on, especially with how much we've been getting spoiled with good otome releases recently. Look for this one to drop sometime in the West 2025. When I think vibrant, refreshing, colorful, I think Radiant Tale. Another visually stunning release that's full of color, excitement, and some of the more gorgeous CGs that you'd ever see in an otome. Both Radiant Tale and Radiant Tale Fanfare are amazing recent additions to the Switch Otome library. Following Tifalia, a recent addition to a circus troupe, fittingly named Circus, we get to see not only her learn to perform in the effort to assist the kingdom in saving the heart of the prince, but also her falling in love with a slew of amazing romance options. And since the first game was so gosh darn colourful and amazing, we got another one in the form of Radiant Tale Fanfare, which is a fan disc packed to the brim with new after stories, happy endings, and much more that we otome fans love to eat up. With both now being on the Switch, if you don't have them already, I highly recommend these both to be picked up, because who doesn't love a story that includes not only a circus but also a dragon, a clown, a magician, an acrobat, a fey beast, and more. And by the way, as I mentioned, most of these got a physical release in the West, and if you want to purchase any video game that has a Western release, please use the Video Games Plus links down below in the description and pinned comment. Video Games Plus are a fantastic website with great prices in cheap Canadian money, You know, the conversion rate's like really good, especially for American people. And not only that, but they also have free worldwide shipping if you purchase something over 80 Canadian dollars, which is only about 60 American dollars. So you can pick up a couple of otomes and get them shipped for free to wherever you are in the world. Plus, if you buy something with my link, then you also get put into a draw to win a $10 discount coupon, like every week, and the winner of which I announce every Monday in my Let's Get Physical video series. So yeah, if you purchase with my links, thank you ever so much. It greatly supports the channel. What else have we got? Seven Scarlets is one of my favorites from the Vita Otome era. Following our protagonist to a small remote town, we join her in a quest to uncover and solve the disappearance of her brother in a story that contains ghosts, mysteries, scares, adventure, and pretty much everything else you can think of. Seven Scarlet has pretty much everything you could want out of an otome, and it's one I highly recommend for those who are looking for a deep dive into a story that contains not only romance, but also an intriguing story. I am grateful again for more otomes coming to the Switch from previous systems, and while this one doesn't seem to have an English release as of yet, we're pretty sure it's coming in the future. Who doesn't love a good mystery? Well, the main character of Charade Maniacs, Hiyori Senna, sure is forced to decide whether she likes it or not. After getting kidnapped by a masked figure, she is then forced to act in strange dramas by her unknown captor, and if that doesn't sound wild enough, the game never lets up from there. She, along with 9 other individuals, spend time trying to figure out who has kidnapped them while also surviving the strange situation they've been placed in. The Who is X vibes that this game gives is ultimately what makes it such a draw. And for me, it was not so much the fact that it was another otome that drew me in the first place, but the fact I got to spend time solving another unknown. I'd say my biggest disappointment for this one was it just did feel a bit blah. Like, not bad, not amazing, but somewhere in the middle. I love the style and the fact that you're spoiled for choices with 9 love interests, but I'd love to see a bit more from this. Overall, if you're interested in another otome over to the Switch from the Vita and a small taste of, traitor hunting, grab Charade Maniacs for an entertaining ride. Variable Barricade is one of those otomes with a contrived premise that just kinda works. When a girl who is an heir to a huge fortune from her grandfather is told that first she must find a husband, Hibari is forced to live together with not only her butler, but 4 potential bachelors, each of which has their own flaws and issues to overcome. But Hibari has to pick one of them, and it's up to you to see each of them through. The overall style of this game was very flashy and pretty, and while I wasn't in love with all the romance options, it was still a worthwhile play, and one I'm happy to have in the collection. If you're looking for something that I would compare to a less satisfying Cupid Parasite-esque romance, then this may be the game for you. Talking about a good otome, Olympia Soiree is one of the favorites in the several past years. Riddled with intrigue, romance and danger, this is definitely another one that's worth having in any otome's collector's library. Being the only one of her clan, the titular Olympia must use her power to perform a ritual that restores the sun to the land and keeps the world from being plunged into darkness. Simultaneously, she lives in a world that is dominated by color. Those above ground wear red, blue or yellow, while those underground are considered colorless and shunned. It's up to Olympia to save the world and the people around her, including the many different romances she has. Olympia Soiree is rich with story, lore and world building, and was a particular favorite of mine. I'd highly recommend it to all otome lovers for its beautifully crafted world, amazing character writing, and yes, spicy scenes. A 10 out of 10 in my book. The 2025 otome list continues to grow with an upcoming release of Termirana, The Lucky Princess, and The Tragic Knights dropping next year. This time we have Princess Cecilia as our main MC as she fights against the reputation of being the cursed princess. What's funny is that she's not cursed, but blessed with the ability to see people and places shine to warn her that her life is in danger. I sometimes find these otome premises to get more and more ridiculous. After seeing 5 men shining at a local tournament she attends, she then invites them all to join her as a knight. And pitfalls and of course romance are sure to follow. I'm looking forward to seeing how Termirana stands out from the crowd when it comes blessed with English for release next year. There have been a great many historical otomes released throughout the years, and Winter's Wish Spirits of Edo is yet another. In year 11 of the Kyoho era, Suzono, our main character, has the ability to see emotional threads which are normally invisible to everyone else. Specifically dangerous are black threads which are linked to impending disasters that are about to come. A local village drove her away into isolation, where she is then rescued and brought back into society for the same power that had driven her away, all in the interest of protecting the village from monsters that are coming to attack. With history and the supernatural playing together here, there is a lot of interesting lore being built that applies directly to this story. It gives a good rich vibe, and truly I really love both the setting and story. For a little slice of history with a side of gorgeous visual novel and romance, check this one out. Separated far from the normal world of drama, danger, supernatural powers and other contrived situations, well, here comes Lover Pretend. One of the more normally plotted otomes that we've seen in a really long time. Chiyuki Ueda wants two things from life. One, to be a scriptwriter like her mother before her, and also to find her long-lost father. But since she's never really had any romantic experience, she's finding that she's struggling to write any romantic stories. In the quest to locate her father and potentially fulfill her dream, she ends up scoring a job as an assistant for a film that features all the sons of former staff from the soap opera her mother wrote. What luck! Speaking of which, what other random luck will drop in her lap when she joins this show? Chiyuki is handed 5 love interests in Lover Pretend, all of whom I was a huge fan of. While they each fulfill the typical stereotype romance tropes that are in otomes, there was something about them all that I really appreciated, and I think that goes back to why I love Lover Pretend. It was normal, relaxing even. In a sea of other otomes fighting for attention, this recent localization stands out because it's the ultimate chill, K-drama-esque relaxation otome. Akari Amasawa is faced with a choice. 6 choices in fact, not to mention the other 2 choices that are hidden. What are these choices that you ask? All the romance options you have in Sympathy Kiss. While working at a company that focuses on developing apps, Akari is given the difficult task of bringing a struggling app back to popularity. This, amongst everything else, is a recipe for shenanigans that involve work, play, and the future success of your own career and love life. Sympathy Kiss is another of those that felt like it flew under the radar a little bit upon release, but when you get into it, you really start to see what the game was going for. Akari isn't as lively of a heroine as we usually see in other otome releases, but it gives the player a chance to feel a little more like it's you there as opposed to Akari. That being said, I personally don't want to feel like I'm stuck in a 9-to-5 job when I'm playing a game, so do with that feeling what you want if you choose to play Sympathy Kiss. Amnesia Memories and Amnesia Later X Crowd both compiled together to make up a good recently ported Switch bundle. I personally had heard some very polarizing opinions throughout the years on these. They're either like really great or they're hated, but I wanted to give them a chance. You are starting as basically a blank sheet with, you guessed it, amnesia. No history, no past that you can recall, and it's all up to you to figure out what's going on without letting on that you don't know, all the while you're getting help from a spirit named Orion who assists you on your path to recollection. You start by jumping straight into a route as opposed to diving into a common route, which is what most otomes follow. And from there, you have the choice of 5 romanceable characters. Overall, Amnesia is a ride, and despite the mixed reviews I personally had heard, it was a ride that I enjoyed. Later X Crowd is a Fandisc dual pack that gives you all the extra time with your favorite characters, as the best Fandiscs do. As someone who loves a good Fandisc, I really can't dislike this release, especially since it gives you more time with your favorites and more time to enjoy the world of Amnesia. Welcome to the beautifully crafted world of Steam Prison, and meet Cyrus Tistella. Built on naivety, but strong in every other respect, Cyrus was raised in the Heights, the prestigious part of the steampunk dystopian world that she inhabits, and they thoroughly look down on those who live below in the appropriately named depths. Overall, the social commentary is thick in this game, but it doesn't take away from the story, but more helps give it the stakes it needs to survive. With 6 romances, finishing out with a grand final ending, there is a lot to see in the world of Steam Prison. You even have some romance types in this game, from bodyguards, prisoners, even a servant. All of this together brings an overall gorgeously crafted story in a very all too real, at times situational world. Steam Prison Beyond the Steam, the sequel, isn't out yet, but it's dropping in November of this year, taking place 2 years after the grand ending from the first game. We rejoin Cyrus once again in both a main story as well as a new story called A New Theory. If you wanted more from Steam Prison, now is your chance to pre-order and pick this up when it drops in November. My Next Life as a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom, Pirates of the Disturbance, is quite the mouthful for a game title, but it's actually based on a manga and anime of the same name, but with a completely original story that takes place during a point of the larger story. Katerina Cleese is your average noblewoman until she regains memories that she used to be an average high school student who is now trapped in the world of Fortune Lover, an otome game that she was previously obsessed with. For fans of this existing franchise, and for those that want a hilariously fun otome game, here's your chance to enjoy. While you may feel a little lost at first if you haven't previously watched the anime or are just generally unfamiliar with the characters, such as myself, rest assured you'll catch on quick through the 6 romanceable options that you're given. Pick this one up just for an overall delightful otome that had me laughing all the way through. Having only just released a couple of weeks ago, I haven't had the chance to play Meiji Tokyo Renka Full Moon, a recently translated otome starring protagonist Ayazuki Mei, who meets an illusionist who sends her back in time to a different era of Japan. While that sounds like a really rude thing to do, it sparks what sounds like an amazing story that I'm really looking forward to checking out. Love is in the air with 6 historical romantic figures, and honestly the sound of that has me very, very intrigued. I'm looking forward to diving into some history and romance with this one. The physical release was only in Japan, but it does have English. Sarata Suzuhara wanders away from his class during a school field trip, and boom, he wakes up in a strange place, in a different time, and with a completely unknown idea about what's happening to him. Following this, he ends up on a ship inhabited by 3 girls and 9 men, which sounds like a crazy premise, because it absolutely is, and it's wonderful. Norn 9 Var Comes and Norn 9 Last Era follow the story of a different time and a bunch of interweaving romances on an overall entertaining story. While we start off with Suzuhara being our protagonist, it swiftly switches to the perspective of the 3 girls on the ship, and we truly get introduced to the romance and intrigue that this story holds. Last Era was actually recently released in English for the first time, so having Norn 9 complete on Switch makes this even more momentous, and the definitive way to collect both Norn 9 games. Last Era gives 3 different story modes that focus on the past before the Varcom story, the present showing the different perspectives of the original story, a peek at what happens with the characters after the first game, and overall, a double pack otome well worth picking up for your collection. The Crimson Flower That Divides, Lunar Coupling. The first thing I heard about this was how spicy it was. And since we don't typically get a whole lot of very spicy otomes on the Switch, even with this being watered down version of the original game, this sounded like the game for me. An incurable disease known as the Rot runs wild in the world of Crimson Flower. It only affects women, and therefore the population of females has decreased across the continent. Nala, our main hero, is kidnapped by an opposing kingdom and therefore left with a very uncertain future. What will the world hold for her now? Featuring 3 main routes and then additionally 5 branched routes from the 3 main ones, there is a lot of steaminess and intrigue to be dug into this one. The physical release for this was only in Japan, but it does have English. It's not every day that we get an otome that's set in the gritty world of the Italian mafia, and also full of some of the most romantic and gritty bad ends that you can see in a VN. But that happened when we got Piofiore. Both Piofiore Fated Memories and Piofiore Episodio 1926 were released on the Switch in the past several years, and both have been highly praised as some of the best otomes in a long time. The beautiful visuals and setting of 1920s Italy makes it the perfect setting for a thrilling story. You are Liliana Adornato, a girl raised in a church in the city of Boulogne, and somehow you get caught in the middle of 3 different mafia families and their leaders. Who do you side with, and who do you want to seek protection from? In Episodio 1926, we get a continuation of these stories, and more time within the insane world of crime that Lily has found herself within. Overall, I can't recommend these 2 games enough. You can't have one without the other, as they are both done beautifully, both in visuals and story. So next time you're feeling like diving into the criminal underground, you know where to start. Another upcoming release that we can look forward to from Axis Games next year is Utakata no Uchronia. I think I said that correctly. Protagonist Hinagiku is a prestigiously born girl who lives in a utopia set in a floating garden in the sky. When she turns 18, she meets Yashiro, who happens to have just lost his memory and also holds the key to what the whole utopia is really about. With what sounds like a great set of characters and 5 love interests to look forward to, I am interested in seeing what this one holds when it drops next year. Well, look at that, another otome coming from Axis Games in 2025. DesperaDrops is set in Italy, where in the summer of 2028, a student is celebrating the end of exams. Mika Amemine somehow gets implicated in a murder and arrested, where she joins 6 other criminals after the police car they're traveling in gets overturned in an accident. All of this, and then we also find out that Mika has mysterious powers that someone is after. The true recipe for an exciting otome game, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm interested in seeing the insanity. DesperaDrops is dropping on the Switch next year and I can't wait. Code Realize is my favorite otome series of all time. This was actually also the first otome game I ever played, and I fell in love with it. Set in steampunk 19th century London, Cardia is a girl with a strange affliction. Her skin is poisonous to anyone that touches it. Not only that, but she's living alone, set apart and isolated from the outside world in a house in the country. Guardian of Rebirth starts our story off by a group of soldiers breaking in and pulling her from the house, but their plan is foiled by a mysterious thief named Arsène Lupin. Joined by a band of a vampire hunter, a vampire, a scientist, a rich and mysterious noble, and another vampire, the story unfolds through several different routes, each filled with romance and a very well written story. Future Blessings focuses on the deepening of each relationship that Cardia has, from building more friendships to even having a wedding and romantic escapades or two. It really ties up the stories from the first game and even adds more that I personally found unexpectedly delightful. Last but not least, just in time for Christmas, there's Wintertide Miracles, which is one of my favorite Fandiscs that I've ever played. While there is more mystery to be found here, there's also adorable romantic Christmas themed stories that focuses on alternative timelines and has some of the most adorable CGs that you can find in an otome. If it wasn't already obvious, I highly recommend all 3 Code Realize games for their wonderful writing, excellent character development, and increasingly entertaining plots. If you haven't already, pick them up and see what you're missing. Inheriting a cafe sounds all well and good, but what if that cafe actually turns out to be a safe haven for a bunch of mysterious and mystical creatures from another world? Welcome to the life of Kotone, who ends up taking over her grandfather's old coffee shop and discovering what a crazy place it is. Cafe Enchante is one of these otomes that holds a lot of promise and has one of my top favorite routes in any otome ever. Shout out to Kaoru Rindo, if you know, you know. But certain parts of it felt lacking in the end. The game has a lot of build up to the final route, which you spend every other route anticipating. Unfortunately, however, this actually has one of the worst true endings or final endings in any otome ever. If they had fixed that one thing, I would probably look on this game a lot more fondly. But it felt like a dissatisfying and dragged out end to an otherwise intensely delightful game. Overall, it's a good otome, just with a very bad ending, take that into account. Showcasing beautiful art and yet another historical setting, Nightshade is an otome that is riddled with goodness. It has rave reviews, an incredibly strong heroine in Enju Ueno, and an intriguing story. Set during a time with ninjas and thieves, Enju is hard at work training to becoming a ninja herself, just like most of her friends are. It's very politically based, and there's lots of tension, excitement, and the story packed into this game, and I cannot recommend it enough. I'm not usually a history person, but Nightshade is no doubt an otome gem that shines bright amongst its peers, and I truly can't recommend it enough. As a must-have pickup, Enju is a badass, to put it lightly, and her romance options are everything but boring. Give this one a go if you haven't already, because being a ninja and a part of history is worth your time and money. Now, the physical release for this was only in Japan, but it does have English. Speaking of Nightshade, next up in our list is Birishana Rising Flower of Genpei, developed by the same team as Nightshade. We join heroine Shanao as she navigates hiding a huge secret from the world. Is a she and not a man, as everyone thinks she is. The last survivor of the Genji name, she now has her sights set on taking down the Heike clan, who have taken over and currently are causing turmoil in the country. This is how she ends up running into the love interest from the world of Birishana and deepening those relationships as the story goes on. Birishana is another action-packed historical story that has a lot of culture going for it and another badass heroine at its helm. For those that thrive on the Otome world of historical settings and all its numerous choices, this is yet another one to add to your shelves. Not too many Otomes have hit the world the way Cupid Parasite has. With its insane color palette, catchy music, and very stylish release, Cupid Parasite has quickly become one of the better Otomes to release recently, and is another good example of how spoiled we are for choice of good Otomes, since both Cupid Parasite and Cupid Parasite Sweet and Spicy Darling nail the genre in all the right ways. Lynette works at the Cupid Corporation as a matchmaker, and she's really good at it, but it helps that she is actually Cupid. Like, seriously, she's Cupid, the goddess of love. Given the impossible task to find matches for the impossible match, the Parasite 5, consisting of a group of men who have been famously difficult to find true love for, in the first game it's Lynette's job to balance this job plus the ability to keep her identity as Cupid a secret. But whether or not she succeeds is all up to you to find out. In Sweet and Spicy Darling, we get the delicious, pun intended, continuation of the story and the opportunity to find out what happens to the characters moving forward. I have to say, this is an amazing continuation of all the stories, and I can't recommend it enough for those that love the first game. The glitz, the glamour, it's the same, and the theming of the game is nothing short of delightful. If you're in the mood for some spice and some of the funniest Otome situations you'll find in a while, pick up Cupid Parasite and find out what it means to find your true love. Talk about anticipation. Busterfellows was the definition of it. This game dropped onto the Switch and became something very popular very quickly. You are a journalist who, unbeknownst to you, is thrown into an adventure in romance, whether you like it or not. She also has one of those fun abilities that our protagonists so often do, and she can go back in time through the body of someone else, but at least it's a more unique ability and makes her a fun character. In fact, I'll give her props as one of the better Otome protagonists that's out there. She's herself, she's real, and it's refreshing in the face of so many that aren't as forthcoming. That being said, Busterfellows as a whole wasn't a visual novel I loved, although it does have a very nice place in the Otome Hall of Fame because it has very good roots, my personal being Shu, some roots that were okay, looking at you Scarecrow and Limbo, and then some that I will never play again as they are just downright unfortunate. Mozu and Helvetica, I hate you. The overall game though I found to be very okay. The story was fine, the visuals are pretty, the mystery is enough to hold water, and the actual development of the character bonds felt a lot more real as opposed to contrived and forced together based on circumstance, but I didn't really feel the satisfaction of a game well done when it was over. Hana Awase New Moon Collection has long been a visual novel of mystery to me, mostly because I saw all the versions of it out there and I couldn't figure out what I was looking at. Hana Awase New Moon Collection captures 4 installments, each of which feature the same characters but a different story. While I don't agree with the idea of spreading the story out into 4 different installments, each of which are on the Switch and very highly priced, it does seem like actual Otome fans have a lot of love for it. The protagonist is Mikoto, yet another ordinary high school student who enjoys playing the popular card game of the time, Hana Utsushi. But after it turns out she's invited to join a highly prestigious academy, she finds herself caught up in the ability to play an even more dangerous game with higher stakes called Hana Awase. There is a lot of nuance to it as you'd expect, but the complexity of the game kind of makes sense once you read it. If you're in it for the long haul and the overarching story, why not check this one out? You can buy all 4 stories individually in Japan, they do have English, but there's also a collector's edition available which has all 4 games together in one nice box. 9RIP. Funnily enough, this is the game I'm currently playing and working on a review for, so the timing for this being on the list couldn't be better. Misa Ishiki doesn't believe in ghosts. Well, she doesn't think she does, but all that changes when she starts to see and slowly believe that something around her is a little bit strange. Packed to the brim with urban legends, ghosts, and what I thought would be extra spooky stories, this one, so far, has turned out to be delightful in all types of ways. The love interests have turned out to be really good, and the overall vibe of the stories could not be more perfectly timed for spooky season. It really is reigniting the love I have for all things spooky, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing more people enjoy it as time goes on. And while I won't say by any means I found the game to be scary, you might want to keep the lights on just in case. It's no death mark, but I do occasionally have to check behind my shoulder sometimes while playing. Hanemu Kare to and Bloom is a cozier game. It translates as Him, the Smile, and Bloom, or simply Hanakare. This takes place in a small flower shop called Phil Flower. Each love story also happens to take place at this flower shop and takes place between 4 different couples, all of who share a special bond and adorable story. While there is no common route in Hanakare, you can jump straight into the action by picking up the route that you want to dive in first. This is a more unique otome since it's 4 different heroines falling in love simultaneously during the story. It's not by any means a show-stopping otome, but if you're looking for a cozy game to help pass the time and give you some springy summer vibes, this is a good otome for you. The physical release was only in Japan, but it does have English. Mistonia no Kibu, The Lost Delights. Well, Grand Albion is a place that is under the rule of the Fairy Queen, but all is not as beautiful as it seems under this rule, as we find out when things get shaken up. Our heroine, Applause, yes, her name is Applause, while joining under the false pretense of being a maid in a mansion that's owned by someone that she's seeking vengeance on, Applause does everything she can to expose secrets and make things interesting in this upcoming release to the West, translated by Axis, coming in 2025. The 2025 list never seems to end. This is one I'm really looking forward to, solely based on the premise, and the art from what I've seen is beautiful. I've seen a few complaints about the lack of romance, but it seems to have a spicy side of vengeance to it, which I'm here for. Last but not least is Dairoku, Agents of Sakuratani. I remember being very excited for this initially when it came out, but unfortunately the best way I can describe Dairoku is being a bit meh. It's not the worst visual novel I've ever read, but it's certainly not the best. Following protagonist Shino Akitsu, who has the ability to see the supernatural that the others cannot, we join her in Sakuratani. This town is located in a completely different dimension, and she gets to chat with and hang out a whole lot of cast of spirits, creatures, and more. Overall, the game's art wasn't my favorite, and the main protagonist was very okay. She wasn't boring, but she was far from being, interesting. The romance choices aren't very romantic. It felt like it left me wanting more from the characters and their relationship developments. But overall, I would say Dairoku isn't a must purchase, like not immediately, but keep an eye on, maybe grab it in a good sale. Or if you're looking for something that doesn't require much maintenance, then this one could be for you. As you can see, the Switch is the place to be for otomes. While PC also has, is a hotbed for the good classics, we're seeing more and more and more come to the Switch, even exclusively. And the list leading into next year and the year after has led me to believe that the Switch will go down as the otome juggernaut for many, many generations. Thank you to Katie Pajamas for writing this video. If you want to purchase any otome game or any video game in fact, please do consider using the links down below in the description and the pinned comment. That helps support me, it helps me help support Katie Pajamas, pay her for this nice big chunky script. So yes, thank you to you, thank you to her, thank you to everyone. You have to thank me though, okay? I just did my voice, that's all I did. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Take care.